Imagine Congress finally agrees on something. Republicans support it, Democrats support it, builders support it, housing advocates support it, and then it still doesn't get signed. Why? Because a completely different fight over election rules is now standing in the way. That's not normal. That's not efficient. And for people who care about housing affordability, that's maddening. Today, we're talking about one of the biggest housing bills in years, why it suddenly got dragged into a voter ID fight, Bitcoin flirting with the $60,000 level, the future of digital money, and why AI may become one of the biggest competitive advantages over the next decade. I'm Kyle Grimshaw, and this is the Texas Market Brief. Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Kyle Grimshaw with the Grimshaw Home Group. Today is Wednesday, June 24th, 2026, and honestly, today is just one of those days where housing, politics, technology, and money all seem to slam into each other at exactly the same time. So let's get into it. Let's start with housing. Congress passed the 21st Century Road to Housing Act with broad bipartisan support, and that alone is a big deal. Because if you've watched politics for more than about 5 minutes, you know broad bipartisan agreement is rare. So when both parties actually line up behind a housing bill, people pay attention. And they should, because this bill is fundamentally about one thing: supply. In simple terms, it's meant to increase housing supply by reducing certain barriers to development, expanding financing options for affordable housing projects, and addressing the shortage that's been building for years. Additionally, it's meant to limit private equity from taking away from that same supply that affects everyday buyers. Why does that matter? Supply matters. When demand rises faster than supply, prices rise. That's true for homes, it's true for apartments, it's true for rents. And it's one of the biggest reasons affordability has gotten so bad across the country. So the logic here is not complicated. If we build more housing, affordability should improve over time. Not overnight, not magically, but over time. That's why this bill matters. And that's why what happened next is so frustrating. Now, here's where this gets absurd. Despite broad bipartisan support, the bill has become tangled up in a completely separate political fight. President Trump canceled the signing and is now demanding movement on election-related legislation before moving forward with the housing bill. And that's where a lot of people throw up their hands and say, wait a second, what does that have to do with housing? And the honest answer is not much directly. But this is how Washington works when politics take over. One issue gets used as leverage for another, one priority gets held hostage by another. And suddenly, a bill about housing suddenly becomes collateral damage in a completely different fight. That is the chaos. And if you're a buyer, renter, builder, developer, or anyone who actually wants more housing built, that should annoy you. Because this is exactly the kind of dysfunction that makes people lose faith that anything can get done. And that brings us to a new segment that we're introducing in today's show. Kyle Explains. Sometimes the biggest stories in America involve topics people hear about constantly, but may not fully understand. So this segment is simple. No political spin, no legal jargon, just a straightforward explanation of what something is, what it does, and why people should care. Today, Kyle explains voter ID. All right, what is voter ID? Let's start with the basics. At its core, voter ID laws are meant to verify the person casting a ballot is the person they claim to be. But the current debate goes beyond just showing an ID at the polls. A major part of this fight is also about proof of citizenship during voter registration and tighter verification requirements in federal elections. Supporters argue that voting is one of the most important rights in a democracy and that stronger identification and citizenship checks help protect the integrity of the elections. Their argument is straightforward. If identification is required for many important things in life, then requiring it in elections is reasonable. Opponents see it differently. They argue that additional documentation requirements can create barriers for eligible voters who may not have easy access to the right paperwork. So their concern is less about the idea of identification itself and more about accessibility, paperwork, and who could get left out. That's why this debate gets so heated, because people are not always arguing about this exact same thing. They're often arguing about two priorities that both matter: election security and voter access. Most people agree both are important. The fight is over where the balance should be. And whether you support these laws or oppose them, understanding the issue matters, because elections influence housing policy, taxes, infrastructure, business regulation, and a whole lot more. That's why this conversation stretches far beyond politics. Now let's switch gears. Bitcoin flirted with the $60,000 level today. And yes, that gets people's attention. But surprisingly, that may not be entirely bad news. Markets need corrections. Corrections force people to reassess risk. They flush out excess speculation, and they force investors to stop chasing hype and start thinking about fundamentals again. But Bitcoin's price is not actually the most interesting part of this story. The bigger story is what banks, governments, and financial institutions are doing behind the scenes. Around the world, major players are building blockchain-based payment systems, digital settlement networks, and tokenized financial products. Why? Because moving money is still way more inefficient than it should be. Transactions can take days. Cross-border payments can be expensive. Settlement systems can be outdated. And nobody wants to be the last one using financial infrastructure built for a different era. Everyone wants a faster system. Everyone wants a cheaper system. And everyone wants their network to become the standard. So, in many ways, what we're watching is a fight over what the next generation of money movement will look like. And that is much bigger than whether Bitcoin is up or down in a single day. Speaking of the future, let's talk about artificial intelligence. Most people have heard of ChatGPT. Far fewer people understand how quickly these tools are turning into a serious professional infrastructure. These are no longer just novelty tools, they're becoming productivity tools for entrepreneurs, analysts, developers, researchers, marketers, business owners, and professionals across almost every industry. People are using AI to write reports, analyze documents, research complex topics, build software, create marketing campaigns, automate repetitive work, and solve problems faster than ever before. The biggest mistake people can make right now is assuming AI is just a chatbot. It is not. It's becoming a tool set. And the people who learn how to use that tool set effectively may gain a serious advantage over the next decade. I do not think AI replaces everyone, but I think absolutely that AI will replace some tasks. And that distinction matters a lot, because the people who understand that early are going to move faster than the people that are still laughing it off. Here's my take. At first glance, today's topics seem completely unrelated: housing, election rules, Bitcoin, artificial intelligence. But I think they're all connected by one big theme. America is fighting over the future in real time. How we build homes, how we run elections, how money moves, and how people work, and how technology fits into all of it. The people who take time to understand those changes early will have an advantage over the other people who ignore them. Because whether or not we like it, the future is coming anyway, and it doesn't care about who feels ready or not. I want to hear from you. Which of these topics do you think will have the biggest impact over the next 10 years? Housing, election rules, digital money, or artificial intelligence? Let me know in the comments. If you found today's episode helpful, make sure to subscribe. And if there's a topic you'd like me to explain in a future edition of Kyle Explains, leave it in the comments. I'm Kyle Grimshaw with the Grimshaw Home Group. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Texas Market Brief. I'll see you Friday.